You can also use the FMG initialization. The FMG initialization option in Fluent uses the full multigrid algorithm in the density-based explicit solver to generate and solve on a system of coarser mesh. So what it does is it solves the flow equations on a coarser mesh, interpolates to next finest, and so on and so forth until the finest mesh is reached. And an approximate solution is used for initial conditions for subsequent full Navier-Stokes equations. So it is like solving a simpler problem with a coarser grid, making the grid finer, again solving it, and all this happens in the background. So this is a very good initialization method. You get a fairly good solution to start the simulation rather than just giving random initial values. There are several benefits of this approach. It is convenient for the user. No separate solution is required. Any solver can be used, that is segregated, coupled, implicit, or explicit. It permits very large Courant number as well for a coupled implicit solver. So it is a very good way to actually initialize your solution in case of turbomachinery flow problems. For doing FMG initialization, we have to go to FMG interface in the text user interface. And you have to type solve initialize set FMG initialization in the text user interface or the command line. This permits setting of convergence tolerance as well, maximum number of iterations on each coarse grid. These all settings can also be done using the text user interface commands. And the initialization using the set FMG initialization, you can set all these parameters and how to initiate the how to actually initialize the domain. You have to give the command solve initialize FMG initialization, and after that you continue to solve your problem as normal by pressing calculate. There are some recommended strategies or techniques in order to obtain better accuracy as well as good convergence in case of the single reference frame model. Higher degree of coupling, we will see them in this particular slide. There needs to be higher degree of coupling between the momentum equation when the influence of the rotational terms is large. A higher degree of rotation introduces large radial pressure gradients which drive the flow in the axial and radial direction. So this gives rise to distribution of the swirl or rotation in the field. This coupling may lead to instabilities. This coupling may lead to instabilities in the solution process and hence require special solution techniques to obtain a converged solution or a better or quicker solution. There are some recommended techniques or strategy considering the first is to consider switching in the frame in which velocities are solved by changing the velocity formulation in case of pressure based solver. We can use the Presto scheme, which is well suited for steep pressure gradients involving rotational flows or rotating flows. We can ensure that the mesh is sufficiently refined to resolve large gradients in pressure and swirl velocity. We can reduce the under relaxation factors for velocities and keep it around 0.3 or 0.5 or even lower than that if necessary. We can begin the calculations using a low rotational speed and then go on increasing the rotational speed gradually in order to reach the final desired operating conditions. So these are the different strategies that we can use in order to get better convergence and accurate results. There are also some recommended strategies to avoid instability. We can gradually increase the rotational speed to improve solution stability. Because of rotation of the reference frame, the rotation defined via the boundary condition can lead to large complex forces in the flow. Due to this, the Fluent calculations may be less stable as the speed of rotation, hence the magnitude of these forces increases. One of the most effective method to control this is that we can start the simulation with a low rotational speed and then slowly increase the rotational speed up to the desired level. Let us discuss how to do this. First, set up the problem using low rotational speed in inputs are the boundary conditions and for regular velocity of the reference frame. The rotation speed in the first attempt might be selected as 10% of the actual rotating speed. Next, solve the problem at these conditions, that is the 10% of the actual speed. Save the initial solution data. Modify the inputs, that is increase the speed or the angular speed or the reference frame speed by some amount, perhaps double it. Restart or continue the calculation using the solution data that is saved in the earlier step as the initial guess for the new calculations. Again, save the data and continue to increment and restart the solution using the initial solution as the initialization by slowly increasing the velocity or ramping up the velocity until you attain the actual desired rotational speed. So this is the way of gradually increase the rotation speed in order to avoid instability in case of rotating flow modeling by moving reference frame. Now let us discuss what are the result types. We will just highlight some of the result types that you can plot using when you are modeling a single reference frame, and some of the important factors. Now when you solve a problem in a moving reference frame, you can plot or report both the absolute and relative velocities. For all velocity parameters, corresponding relative values will be available for results. These are available in the velocity category. When plotting velocity vectors, you can choose to plot vectors in the absolute frames, or you can select the relative vectors. If you plot the relative vector velocity vectors, you might want to color the vectors by relative, as by default they will be colored by absolute vectors. So there is a bit of misleading when you plot different types of vectors, what sort of coloring is there. So be careful with plotting vectors, and understand which type of vectors you are plotting, which is the velocity formulation you are using, and how to make sense of the results. You should get it by gradual practice of some of the tutorials of the rotating flow modeling. So to summarize this particular session, we have seen what is the SRF model in Fluent. We have also understood the concepts behind it. We also studied how to set up the SRF model in Fluent, what are the different solution steps. In the next session, we will see what is the MRF model and how to analyze a rotating flow problem using the MRF model. Thank you for attending this particular session. See you in the next session of the advanced course on rotating flow modeling using Fluent, which is the Learn CX course on turbo machinery. Thank you.